We start this hour with the escalating situation across the occupied West Bank. Israeli settlers have attacked another Palestinian village in northern Ramallah. They set fire to homes, cars, and other properties in the village of Turmusaya. There are reports of injuries. This is the latest round of violence after the killing of 4 Israelis on Tuesday near an illegal settlement. Harry Fawcett is near the entrance of Turmusaya village in Ramallah. Start with what's happening now, Harry, and what you're able to see.
Well, yeah, this attack took place earlier on Wednesday. What we're hearing is from people inside the village of Turmusaya, what they're telling us. We're also getting some information from the Palestinian Red Crescent Society. We haven't been able to get in there ourselves. There is a police or an Israeli forces checkpoint just near the entrance there, and when they spotted our Palestinian license plates, they allowed us to go no further. Despite the fact we're journalists, they said they couldn't care less, and so that's why we're here. But what we are hearing from inside is a pretty disturbing picture that, according to a couple of sources from the village, up to 200 Israeli settlers from a nearby settlement attacked the village earlier on Wednesday. We've also had a slightly contradictory statement from the head of the local council, who puts that number much lower at about 40, but nonetheless, that some of them were armed and they came with fuel and sticks. At least 3 houses totally burned, about 20 damaged by fire and by rocks and damaged in other ways. But in terms of the injuries, that's what is more disturbing. We're hearing from the Palestinian Red Crescent that some 12 people were injured by live fire. Now, there are some suggestions that perhaps some of the settlers themselves were shooting those bullets. There was also a confrontation after the settlers left between Palestinian residents and the Israeli forces who came in shortly afterwards. Injuries sustained as well by rubber-coated bullets from tear gas as well. And we were hearing about a potential other development. I'm just going to talk to my producer, Aziza. Do we have any confirmation of potential fatalities? We don't have that confirmation yet, but there are some suggestions that some of those injuries may well have turned more serious, at least. So this is a very major attack. People in this village say they are used to quite a lot of settler violence here, but they've never had an attack like this in their experience.
Yeah, and we understand it's a rapidly developing situation, of course, Harry. This is not happening in a vacuum, far from it. Talk to us about the sharply escalating cycle of violence over the last 24, 36 hours alone.
Well, yes, I mean, there's a proximate, rapidly escalating cycle of violence, and there is one that is some months long, all within the context, of course, of the wider conflict. But yes, early on Tuesday, or in the afternoon of Tuesday, rather, there was a Palestinian shooting attack at a petrol station just outside another illegal settlement, the settlement of Eli, north of Ramallah. In that attack, 4 Israelis were shot dead, 4 others were injured. An Israeli man exchanged bullets with one of the 2 suspected, one of the 2 attackers. One Palestinian man was left dead at the scene. Another was then surrounded. A taxi he was driving in was surrounded by Israeli forces north of Nablus. Later in the early evening, he was shot dead inside that taxi. And then since then, there has been this wave of settler violence targeting Palestinians in various areas up and down the West Bank. Late on Tuesday night, we saw a lot of that concentrated around Nablus, the very consistent flashpoint of Huwara, but also other villages in the area as well. Fires were set. Dozens of people were injured in those attacks. We now have this situation here as well. And on top of that, there have been people massing, Israeli settlers and settler activists and senior government figures on the far right of this coalition government who've been massing at a place called Evyatar, a so-called, under Israeli terms, illegal outpost from which people were ejected over many occasions, but most recently in 2021. There are now very firm plans to re-establish that illegal outpost into a settlement in Israeli terms. It's still illegal under international law. And so there's a prospect potentially of further confrontations between the village of Beitar, which is just under that settlement, again a very regular flashpoint, and this massing of settler activists there. One other point from the Israeli side, they're saying that they are promoting the planning of 1,000 further new units at the settlement of Eli, where this attack took place. They say that's in response to what they call terrorism. The Palestinian Executive Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the Secretary General of that committee, he's saying that there is organized terrorism coming from the Israeli side.
Harry Fawcett, near the entrance of Turmusaya village in the occupied West Bank. Thank you for your reporting. Israel's far-right government has also just approved the construction of 1,000 new units in the Eli illegal settlement, the site of Tuesday's attack that Harry was telling us about. Al Jazeera's Imran Khan is in West Jerusalem with more on that. Imran.
Well, it came via a statement from the Prime Minister's office. It said the decision was reached by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Our response to terror, it says, is to strike it with force and to build our country. This 1,000 new settlement units within Eli is being seen as an act of defiance by the Israelis in the face of what happened on Tuesday. This was announced on Wednesday. Now, oftentimes they do announce settlements after an attack such as this. But right now, things are very different. Just a few days ago, the process to streamline settlements was actually put forward and approved by the cabinet. It used to be a 6-phase process. At any point during those phases, politicians, the international community could raise objections. They simply got rid of that. And now Bezalel Smotrich, who's the finance minister, is now almost completely in control of approving those settlements. So this will be a big victory for him. This is on top of 4,000 new settlements that will be discussed on Wednesday that drew international ire, particularly from the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who said these settlements needed to stop. Now, Bezalel Smotrich has also been calling for a large-scale operation in the occupied West Bank. Comments have been echoed by the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. They haven't got that, so maybe this is the compromise, but there's enormous amount of pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from the far right of his coalition to launch a major operation in the occupied West Bank, and his far-right coalition partners have the trump card. They say, if you don't do it, we're simply going to quit the coalition and force new elections.
Imran Khan in West Jerusalem, thank you very much. And